Nothing says welcome home like your own suitcase sitting on the porch like a rejected pizza delivery. I stood there in the October drizzle, keys still jingling in my hand, staring at my life packed into two mismatched bags and a cardboard box labeled Eli's junk in Jenna's precise handwriting. The front door opened before I could even reach for the handle. My wife stood there in her pressed work clothes, arms crossed, with that look she reserved for contractors who showed up late and telemarketers who called during dinner. Behind her lurked Tanya, her younger sister, wearing a smirk that could have curdled milk. "Don't bother with the keys," Jenna said, her voice flat as yesterday's soda. "They won't work anymore." I blinked. "Come again?" "You heard me, Eli. I had the locks changed this morning." She held up a shiny new key like she was dangling a treat in front of a dog. "We know what you've been planning." The rain picked up, and I could feel it soaking through my work shirt. 3 12-hour days fixing Mrs. Patterson's kitchen cabinets, and I come home to this. Planning what exactly? Tanya stepped forward, practically bouncing on her toes. She always did enjoy a good show, especially when she wasn't the one getting rained on. "Oh, please. The secret bank account? The late nights? The way you've been acting all distant and weird?" I looked from Tanya back to Jenna, my wife of 6 years, the woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and steal fries off my plate. Now she stood there like a stranger wearing Jenna's face. "What secret bank account?" I asked. "Don't play dumb," Jenna snapped. "I found the statements, Eli. All those withdrawals. All that money you've been hiding from me." The statements. Right. The ones for the savings account I'd been building to surprise her with a trip to Ireland for our anniversary. The one I'd been contributing to every week for 8 months, working overtime and side jobs to make it happen. I almost laughed, but the sound that came out was more like a cough. "Those withdrawals," I said slowly, "were deposits, Jenna, into a vacation fund. For us." Tanya rolled her eyes so hard I'm surprised they didn't fall out. "Sure they were. Just like all those work emergencies that kept you out until midnight were really work emergencies." I stared at her. Tanya, who'd been living in our guest room for 3 months after her latest boyfriend kicked her out. Tanya, who ate our food, used our utilities, and never contributed a dime. Tanya, who apparently had nothing better to do than poison my marriage. "The work emergencies," I said, keeping my voice level, "were actual emergencies, like when the Hendersons' water heater burst at 11 p.m. and flooded their basement, or when old Mr. Garcia's furnace went out during that cold snap last week." But I could see it in Jenna's eyes. She'd already made up her mind. Tanya had been working on her, probably for weeks, planting seeds of doubt and watering them with lies. "I don't want to hear your excuses," Jenna said. "I want you gone. Tonight." The rain was really coming down now, turning the October evening into a cold, miserable soup. I looked at my suitcases, then at the house I'd spent 2 years renovating, the porch I'd rebuilt from scratch, the windows I'd replaced last spring, the half-finished workshop in the basement where I'd been building Jenna a hope chest for Christmas. "This is my house too," I said. "Not anymore." Tanya held up a piece of paper. "Jenna's filing for separation. You can contest it in court if you want, but until then, you're trespassing." I took the paper, water spots blooming across the legal text. Irreconcilable differences, abandonment of marital duties, a bunch of legal nonsense that boiled down to one simple fact: I was homeless. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked. Jenna's expression softened for just a moment, and I saw a flicker of the woman I'd married. Then Tanya whispered something in her ear, and the moment passed. "That's not my problem anymore," Jenna said. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you started planning your exit strategy." Exit strategy. Right. Because saving money for a romantic getaway was clearly the same as plotting to abandon my wife. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I picked up my suitcases, leaving the cardboard box for last. It was heavier than it looked, full of tools and personal items that Tanya had apparently deemed worthy of exile. As I lifted it, the bottom gave way, spilling my grandfather's watch, some old photos, and a handful of receipts across the wet porch. "Oops," Tanya said, not bothering to hide her grin. I knelt down, gathering up the scattered pieces of my life. The watch had belonged to my grandfather, a railroad man who'd worked 40 years without missing a single day. The photos were from our honeymoon, back when Jenna still looked at me like I hung the moon. The receipts were from the jewelry store downtown, where I'd been making payments on a diamond necklace for Jenna's birthday next month. As I stood up, clutching the soggy mess, I caught a glimpse through the living room window. The safe in our bedroom closet was open, and I could see Tanya's reflection in the hallway mirror. She was watching me with the satisfied expression of a cat who'd just caught a particularly fat mouse. "I left some emergency cash in the kitchen drawer," I said to Jenna, "in case you need anything." She blinked, surprised. "What?" $500. It's in the drawer next to the stove, under the takeout menus. I shouldered my bags and headed for my truck. "Try not to let your sister find it." I climbed into the cab and started the engine, windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm against the rain. Through the kitchen window, I could see Jenna and Tanya rushing inside, probably racing to find the money I'd just mentioned. What they'd find instead was a note I'd written months ago, back when I still trusted my wife enough to leave her surprise vacation fund details where she might stumble across them. A note explaining the Ireland trip, complete with flight confirmations and hotel reservations for next spring. I put the truck in drive and pulled away from the house on Orchard Lane, watching in my rearview mirror as lights came on in every window. Mrs. Dwyer, the neighborhood's unofficial surveillance system, was already peeking through her curtains. By tomorrow morning, the whole street would know that Eli Crane had been kicked out of his own home. But as I drove through the rain toward the cheap motel on Route 9, I found myself smiling. Because just before I'd picked up that cardboard box, I'd managed to slip my phone out of my pocket and hit record. And now I had a very interesting conversation saved in my voice memos, featuring Tanya's gleeful admission that they were planning to clean out the safe once I was gone. Let the games begin. The Sunrise Motor Lodge hadn't seen a sunrise worth celebrating since the Carter administration. My room smelled like cigarettes, exhaustion, and industrial-strength cleaner that had given up long ago. The bed sagged in the middle like a hammock, and the heater groaned and wheezed every time it started up. I'd been there 3 days when Jimmy Kowalski found me. "Jesus, Eli," he said, standing in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee and a look of genuine concern. "This place is depressing even by my standards." Jimmy managed the Rusty Anchor, the kind of blue-collar bar where the beer was cold, the pretzels were stale, and nobody asked too many questions about why you were drinking alone on a Tuesday afternoon. He was also the closest thing I had to a best friend, which said something about either my social skills or my taste in companions. "It's temporary," I said, taking one of the coffees. It was still hot, which made it better than anything the motel's vending machine had to offer. "Yeah? How temporary? Because I heard through the grapevine that your wife's been telling people you ran off with another woman." I nearly choked on the coffee. "What?" "Oh, it gets better. According to Tanya, you've been having an affair with some woman from Portland. Apparently, that's where all your secret money was going. Hotel rooms and fancy dinners." The coffee suddenly tasted like ash. "That's ridiculous." "I know that, and you know that. But the ladies at the grocery store don't know that. Neither do the guys at Murphy's Hardware." Jimmy sat down on the room's single chair, which creaked ominously under his weight. "They're painting you as the bad guy here, buddy." I stared out the window at the parking lot, where my truck sat next to a rusted-out sedan and a motorcycle that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts. 3 days ago, I'd had a home, a workshop, and a wife who at least pretended to love me. Now I had a motel room and a reputation as an adulterer. There's more, Jimmy said quietly. More what? More gossip. More lies. More reasons why you need to get ahead of this before it gets worse. He pulled out his phone and showed me a Facebook post. Look at this. It was from Jenna's account, posted yesterday evening. A photo of her and Tanya at some fancy restaurant downtown, both of them smiling like they'd just won the lottery. The caption read, "Girls' night out. Sometimes you have to celebrate your freedom from toxic people. New beginnings, sister time, blessed to have family, who tell the truth." The post had 37 likes and a dozen comments, all from people I knew, people I'd done work for, people I'd considered friends. Toxic people, I muttered. It gets worse. Check out the comments. I scrolled down, my mood darkening with each response. Brenda Morrison, whose kitchen I'd remodeled last year. You deserve so much better, honey. I always thought something was off about him. Tom Fletcher, who still owed me $200 for fixing his deck. Good riddance to bad rubbish. You and Tanya should treat yourselves to a spa day. The worst one came from Craig Jeffries, who worked at the paper mill with Jenna. Glad you finally saw through his act. Some guys are just good at hiding their true colors. You know I'm here if you need anything. Craig Jeffries, I said aloud. Yeah, you know him? I knew him all right. Craig C.J. Jeffries, Jenna's old high school friend, who'd been sniffing around our marriage like a dog in heat for the past year. Always showing up at neighborhood barbecues, always finding excuses to stop by when I wasn't home, always ready with a shoulder for Jenna to cry on whenever we had even the smallest disagreement. He's been after my wife since graduation, I told Jimmy. Married his own high school girlfriend, but he's been carrying a torch for Jenna for 15 years. Ah. Jimmy nodded knowingly. One of those guys. The kind who pretends to be your friend while he's trying to steal your woman. Exactly. I handed him back his phone, but not before I'd memorized every comment, every name, every smiling emoji. And now, he's got his chance. Jimmy was quiet for a moment, studying my face. So, what are you going to do about it? What can I do? I'm living in a motel that charges by the week, and my wife thinks I'm a cheating scumbag. Meanwhile, she's out celebrating with her sister and probably texting Craig about what a terrible husband I was. You could fight back. How? Well, for starters, you could tell people the truth. About the vacation fund, about the Ireland trip, about all those late-night emergencies that were actually, emergencies. I considered it. I could make my own Facebook post, share screenshots of the hotel reservations and flight confirmations. I could explain about the jewelry store receipts, about the surprise necklace I'd been buying. I could defend myself. But that felt too much like begging, like crawling back to people who'd been all too eager to believe the worst about me. Or, Jimmy continued, you could do some digging of your own. Find out what Jenna and her sister have really been up to while you were working your tail off to pay for their lifestyle. Now that was interesting. What do you mean? I mean, Tanya's been spending an awful lot of money for someone who doesn't have a job. New clothes, new phone, going out to expensive restaurants. Where's that money coming from? Good question. Tanya had been unemployed since she moved in with us, claiming she was between opportunities and focusing on personal growth. But personal growth apparently required a lot of retail therapy. And another thing, Jimmy said. How did Jenna afford to have the locks changed, hire a lawyer, and pay for that fancy dinner, all in the span of 3 days? Last I heard, you guys were living paycheck to paycheck. He was right. We'd been struggling financially for months, ever since Jenna's hours got cut at the paper mill. I'd been working extra jobs just to keep up with the mortgage and utilities. So where had she suddenly found money for legal fees and celebration dinners? Maybe it's time you took a closer look at your own finances, Jimmy suggested. Make sure everything's where you left it. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, something I probably should have done 3 days ago. Checking account, nearly empty, which was normal. We usually ran pretty close to zero by the end of the month. Savings account, also nearly empty, but that was expected since I'd been moving money to the vacation fund. But when I checked the vacation fund account, my stomach dropped. The balance showed $347.82. It should have been close to $4,000. Son of a... I caught myself before I said something that would have made my mother wash my mouth out with soap. What is it? They cleaned out my vacation fund. $3,600. Gone. Jimmy whistled low. Well, that explains the fancy dinner and the lawyer fees. I stared at the phone screen, watching the numbers blur as my vision went red around the edges. $3,600. 8 months of overtime and side jobs. 8 months of skipping lunch and driving a truck with a rattling muffler because I couldn't afford to fix it. 8 months of planning the perfect surprise for a woman who'd just robbed me blind. Eli, Jimmy said carefully, you okay? I looked up at him, and I must have been smiling, because he actually leaned back in his chair. I'm fine, I said. Better than fine, actually. You don't look fine. You look like you're planning something. Maybe I am. I closed the banking app and opened my voice memo recordings, scrolling back to the night I'd been kicked out. Jimmy, want to hear something interesting? I played the recording I'd made on the porch, the one where Tanya gleefully admitted they were planning to clean out the safe once I was gone. Jimmy listened with growing amazement. Holy crap, Eli. Do you know what this is? Evidence. It's more than evidence. It's proof of premeditation. They didn't kick you out because they thought you were cheating. They kicked you out because they wanted access to your money. I nodded, feeling calmer than I had in days. The fog of confusion and hurt was finally lifting, replaced by something much more useful: clarity. So what's the plan? Jimmy asked. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray October sky. Somewhere across town, my wife was probably having lunch with her sister, spending my vacation money and laughing about how easy it had been to get rid of me. Craig Jeffries was probably texting her sweet messages about how she deserved better, and Tanya was probably already planning her next move, whatever that might be. They thought they'd won. They thought I was just going to disappear quietly, maybe send a check for half the mortgage every month and fade into the background of their new, improved lives. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The plan, I said, turning back to Jimmy, is to remind them that I'm not as stupid as they think I am. The thing about being a contractor is that you learn to notice details. A foundation that's settling unevenly. A roof beam that's carrying more weight than it should. A client who's lying about their budget. And after 15 years of fixing other people's problems, I'd gotten pretty good at spotting when something didn't add up. Which is why, on Thursday morning, I found myself parked across the street from my own house, watching Tanya load boxes into a car I'd never seen before. A red Honda Civic with temporary plates and a "Buy Here, Pay Here" sticker in the back window. Mrs. Dwyer was watching too, of course. The woman had turned nosiness into an art form. She was pretending to water her plants, but I could see her craning her neck to get a better view of whatever Tanya was hauling out of my house. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Mrs. D. That girl's been moving stuff out all morning. Thought you should know. I looked across the street and saw Mrs. Dwyer holding up her phone, giving me a little wave. Apparently, she'd gotten my number from Jimmy, who'd gotten it from his wife, who'd gotten it from the neighborhood phone tree. Small towns were like that. Information flowed like water, finding its way into every crack and crevice. I texted back, "What kind of stuff?" "Boxes, bags, that fancy coffee machine from your kitchen. She's been at it since 8 a.m. The fancy coffee machine. The one Jenna had insisted we needed, even though it cost $300 and made coffee that tasted exactly like the $10 machine we'd replaced. Tanya was stealing it, right there in broad daylight. Another text from Mrs. Dwyer. Your wife left for work an hour ago. Hasn't been back. So Jenna didn't know what her sister was up to. Interesting. I watched Tanya make 3 more trips, each time carrying something valuable. The good dishes from our wedding. The sound system I'd saved up for 2 years to buy. Even the toolbox from my workshop, the one filled with my grandfather's old hand tools. That's when I stopped feeling sorry for myself and started getting angry. I waited until Tanya drove away in her new car, then called Jimmy. I need a favor, I said. Name it. Can you meet me at Murphy's Hardware in an hour? I need to pick up some supplies. What kind of supplies? The kind that help you document a crime in progress. An hour later, Jimmy and I were standing in the security camera aisle at Murphy's, looking at a display of wireless surveillance equipment. You sure about this? Jimmy asked. Because if you get caught, I won't get caught. And even if I do, it's still my house. I'm still on the mortgage, still on the deed. I have every right to protect my property. The sales clerk, a kid who couldn't have been more than 19, wandered over with that eager expression that meant he smelled a big commission. Can I help you gentlemen find anything? I need a wireless camera system, I said. Something I can monitor remotely. Motion-activated, good-quality video, works in low light. How many cameras? I thought about the layout of the house. 4 should do it. Living room, kitchen, master bedroom, and the workshop in the basement. The kid's eyes lit up. Oh, we've got just the thing, the Secure Home Pro system. 4 wireless cameras, smartphone app, cloud storage, the works. It's on sale this week for $4.99. $500, almost exactly what I had left in my checking account. I'll take it, I said. Jimmy shook his head. You're really going all in on this, aren't you? They stole $4,000 from me, Jimmy. They kicked me out of my own house. They're telling everyone in town that I'm a cheating, lying piece of garbage. I picked up the camera system box. Yeah, I'm going all in. We spent the next 2 hours at Jimmy's house, reading the instruction manual and setting up the smartphone app. The cameras were smaller than I'd expected, about the size of a deck of cards, with magnetic bases that would stick to any metal surface. When are you planning to install these? Jimmy asked. Tonight. Jenna works late on Thursdays and Tanya usually goes out with her friends. I should have a clear window between 7 and 9. And if you get caught? Then I get caught, but at least I'll know what they're really up to. At 7:30 that evening, I was crouched behind the azalea bushes in my own backyard, feeling like a burglar. The house was dark, except for a single light in the kitchen, and both cars were gone from the driveway. Getting inside was easier than it should have been. Jenna had changed the front door locks, but she'd forgotten about the basement window I'd been meaning to fix for 6 months. The latch was broken, and the window slid open with barely a whisper. I dropped down into my workshop, landing among the sawhorses and lumber scraps that represented months of unfinished projects. The space smelled like sawdust and WD-40, familiar scents that made my chest tight with something that might have been homesickness. The first camera went on a metal shelf bracket in the workshop, positioned to cover the entire basement. The second went in the kitchen, stuck to the side of the refrigerator, where it would be hidden behind a decorative magnet. The third went in the living room, attached to the metal frame of a picture that hung above the couch. The master bedroom was trickier. There wasn't much metal furniture, and I didn't want to put the camera somewhere obvious. Finally, I settled on the inside of the closet door, stuck to the metal rod that held our clothes. Jenna's clothes, I corrected myself. My clothes were currently living in 2 suitcases at the Sunrise Motor Lodge. I was just finishing up when I heard a car door slam in the driveway. My heart jumped into my throat. I checked my phone, 8:47 p.m. Whoever was home, they were early. I crept to the bedroom window and peered through the blinds. Tanya's red Honda was in the driveway, and she was walking toward the front door with her phone pressed to her ear. No, she won't be home until 10, I heard her say as she got closer to the house. We've got plenty of time. Time for what? I heard the front door open and close, then footsteps in the hallway. Tanya was heading toward the kitchen, still talking on the phone. Yeah, I know where she keeps it. Second drawer from the left, under all the junk mail. I was trapped. The bedroom was at the front of the house, and the only way out was through the living room, where Tanya would see me. The basement window was at the back, but I'd have to go through the kitchen to get to the basement stairs. Then I remembered something. The laundry chute. When I'd renovated the house, I'd installed a laundry chute that ran from the master bedroom closet down to the basement laundry room. It was barely big enough for a person, but I'd used it once before when I'd locked myself out and Jenna wasn't home. I opened the closet door as quietly as possible, moved aside the hanging clothes, and opened the small door that covered the chute opening. It was going to be a tight fit, but it was better than getting caught. I squeezed into the chute, feet first, using my elbows and knees to control my descent. The metal ductwork creaked softly, but not loud enough to be heard over Tanya's phone conversation. I landed in the laundry basket with a soft thump, grateful that Jenna hadn't done the washing recently. From upstairs, I could still hear Tanya talking. "Found it," she said. 200 in cash, just like she said, plus some credit cards and... Oh, this is interesting. Looks like a key to a safety deposit box. Safety deposit box? We didn't have a safety deposit box. At least I didn't think we did. No, I'm not going to take it tonight. Too risky, but now I know where it is. I crept up the basement stairs until I could see into the kitchen. Tanya was standing at the counter with Jenna's purse open in front of her, going through it like she was shopping. "Shane, baby, we're going to be set," she said into the phone. "Between the cash I already got and whatever's in that safety deposit box, we can be in Florida by next week." Shane. That must be the boyfriend Jimmy had mentioned, the one with the criminal record. I know, but I can't just disappear yet. Jenna still needs me here to keep her focused on the divorce. If I leave now, she might start thinking too hard about what happened to her money. Tanya pulled something else out of the purse. A small jewelry box that I recognized. It held the diamond earrings I'd given Jenna for our 5th anniversary. "These should be worth at least 500, she said, dropping them into her own purse. "Maybe more if I can find the right buyer." I watched my sister-in-law steal from my wife, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt something like sympathy for Jenna. She thought she was protecting herself from a cheating husband, but she was really being robbed by her own sister. Tanya finished going through the purse and put everything back except the earrings and some cash. Then she walked toward the living room, still talking to Shane. "Tomorrow night," she said. "Jenna's got that work thing, remember? The monthly meeting that goes until midnight. That's when we'll get the safety deposit box key and whatever else we can carry." I heard the front door open and close, then the sound of her car starting up. I waited until the engine noise faded away before I climbed back up the stairs. My phone buzzed with a notification from the camera app. Motion detected in the kitchen. I opened the app and saw a perfect high-definition video of Tanya going through Jenna's purse. Evidence. Beautiful, undeniable evidence. I was almost to the basement window when I heard another car in the driveway. This time it was Jenna's Toyota, and she was home an hour early. I made it through the window and into the bushes just as the front door opened. Through the kitchen window, I could see Jenna moving around, probably making herself a late dinner. My phone buzzed again. The kitchen camera had activated, and I was getting a live view of my wife opening the refrigerator, pulling out leftovers, acting like everything was normal. She had no idea what her sister was planning. No idea that she was about to lose a lot more than just a cheating husband. I crept back to my truck, parked 3 blocks away, and drove back to the motel. But instead of feeling defeated, I felt energized. For the first time in a week, I had a plan. And tomorrow night, when Tanya made her move, I'd be ready. Friday evening found me sitting in my truck outside the paper mill, waiting for Jenna's monthly management meeting to end. According to the schedule posted on their website, the meeting ran from 6 to 11 p.m., which gave Tanya a 5-hour window to rob my wife blind. My phone showed feeds from all 4 cameras, and so far, the house had been quiet. But at 8:15, motion alerts started pinging like a slot machine hitting jackpot. The kitchen camera showed Tanya entering with Shane, a lanky guy with prison tattoos and the kind of mustache that suggested poor life choices. They weren't being subtle about their intentions. "Okay, baby," Tanya said, opening kitchen drawers with practiced efficiency. "We've got maybe 2 hours before she gets home. I want everything valuable that we can carry." Shane was already heading for the living room. "What about the TV?" "Too big, too obvious. Focus on jewelry, electronics, cash. Stuff she might not notice is missing right away." I watched them work through my house like a pair of professional burglars, which, come to think of it, they probably were. Shane knew exactly what to look for and how to find it. This wasn't their first rodeo. The bedroom camera caught Tanya going through Jenna's jewelry box, pocketing rings and necklaces that represented years of gifts and special occasions. She found the safety deposit box key taped to the bottom of a drawer, exactly where she'd expected it to be. "Bingo," she said, holding up the small brass key. "This is our ticket out of here." But it was the basement camera that captured the moment I'd been waiting for. Tanya and Shane had made their way down to my workshop, and they were loading my tools into garbage bags like they were cleaning up after a yard sale. "This stuff's worth good money," Shane said, hefting my grandfather's hand plane. "Real vintage tools, not that Chinese junk they sell now." "Take it all," Tanya replied. "He's never coming back anyway, and Jenna doesn't know a screwdriver from a socket wrench." That's when Shane noticed something interesting. He'd opened the metal cabinet where I kept my important papers, and he was flipping through folders with growing excitement. "Tanya, baby, come look at this." She walked over, and Shane showed her a manila folder labeled Insurance, Homeowner's Policy. So your sister's got a $300,000 policy on this place. And look at this. She just increased the coverage 6 months ago. I couldn't see Tanya's face clearly through the camera, but I could see her body language change. She went very still, the way a cat does when it spots a mouse. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking accidents happen all the time. Kitchen fires, electrical problems, gas leaks, and your sister's going to need a lot of emotional support when she loses everything." "Shane, I'm not talking about hurting anybody. Just property damage. And if we're real careful about it, real smart, nobody ever has to know it wasn't an accident." Tanya was quiet for a long moment, and I found myself holding my breath. This had gone way beyond petty theft. They were talking about insurance fraud now, maybe even arson. "How much time would we need?" she finally asked. "Couple of days to set it up right. Make it look natural, but we'd have to be gone before it happens. Solid alibis, maybe a trip out of state." "What about Jenna?" "What about her? She collects the insurance money, starts over somewhere new. We help her through the grieving process, make sure she doesn't make any bad decisions with all that cash. They were planning to burn down my house and rob my wife of the insurance money, the house I'd spent 2 years renovating, the workshop where I'd built furniture and fixed neighbors' problems, and dreamed of teaching my future kids how to use tools. I was so angry I could barely see straight, but I was also smart enough to keep recording, because this conversation was going to put both of them in prison for a very long time. They spent another hour loading stolen goods into Shane's truck, talking casually about their plans like they were discussing the weather. The insurance fraud was just the beginning. Once they had the money, they were going to convince Jenna to move to Florida, where Shane had connections who could help them disappear. "She trusts you completely," Shane said, as they carried the last bag of my tools upstairs. "After what her husband did to her, you're the only family she's got left." "Exactly. And family takes care of family, right?" They were gone by 10:30, leaving the house looking normal except for the missing items that Jenna might not notice for days or weeks. But I had everything on video, crystal clear evidence of breaking and entering, theft and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. More importantly, I finally understood what was really happening. This wasn't about my marriage or Jenna's suspicions about infidelity. This was about Tanya finding the perfect mark, her own sister, and manipulating her into a position where she could be robbed of everything she owned. Jenna wasn't my enemy. She was another victim. My phone rang. Jimmy's number. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Better than I hoped. I've got them on video committing multiple felonies." "So what's the plan? Call the cops?" I thought about it. I could call the police right now, show them the videos, and probably have Tanya and Shane arrested by morning. But that wouldn't fix my marriage or my reputation. And it wouldn't stop the rumors that were already spreading through town. "Not yet," I said. "I want to try something else first." "Like what?" "Like giving Jenna a chance to see who her sister really is." Saturday morning, I was waiting in the parking lot of Millfield Savings and Loan when they opened at 9 a.m. I'd done some research the night before, and I was pretty sure I knew which bank held Jenna's safety deposit box. I was right. At 9:47 a.m., Tanya's red Honda pulled into the parking lot. She sat in the car for a few minutes, probably working up the courage, then walked into the bank with Jenna's purse and the stolen key. I gave her a 10-minute head start, then followed her inside. The bank was small and old-fashioned, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody and strangers got noticed. I walked up to the customer service desk and smiled at the elderly woman behind it. "Good morning, Mrs. Patterson." She looked up and smiled back. "Eli Crane. How are you doing, honey? I heard about you and Jenna. I'm so sorry." Mrs. Patterson had been my third-grade teacher, back when the world was simpler and divorce was something that happened to other people's parents. "Actually, that's why I'm here," I said. "There's been some confusion about our accounts, and I think someone might be trying to access our safety deposit box without authorization." Her smile faded. "Oh my, that's very serious. Do you have reason to believe someone has your key?" "I have more than reason. I have proof." I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot from the basement camera, clearly showing Tanya finding the key. "This is my sister-in-law, and she's in your bank right now, probably trying to get into our box." Mrs. Patterson's expression went from concerned to alarmed. "Mr. Crane, I need to call the manager immediately. Before you do that, could you check if someone's already accessed the box this morning?" She typed something into her computer, frowning at the screen. "Yes, someone signed in about 15 minutes ago. The signature matches the one we have on file for Jennifer Crane. Except Jennifer Crane is at home, and the woman who signed that card is her sister, who forged her signature." Mrs. Patterson reached for her phone, but I held up a hand. "Wait, let me ask you something. Is there a way to see into the safe deposit box area without being noticed?" "Well, there's a security camera monitor in the manager's office." "Perfect, because I think you're about to witness a crime in progress, and you're going to want video evidence." 5 minutes later, I was standing in the bank manager's office with Mrs. Patterson and a nervous-looking man named Mr. Hendricks, watching a security monitor that showed the safe deposit box area. Tanya was there, all right, with the box open in front of her. She was stuffing something into her purse, cash, from the looks of it, along with some documents and what might have been more jewelry. "That's definitely not Jennifer Crane," Mr. Hendricks said. "No," I agreed. "That's her sister, Tanya Morrison, and she's stealing from a woman who thinks I'm the one who betrayed her." Mr. Hendricks picked up his phone. "I'm calling the police." "Wait," I said. "Give me 5 minutes to make a phone call first, please." He hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes, but if she tries to leave... "She won't get past the front door," Mrs. Patterson assured him. I stepped into the hallway and called Jenna's cell phone. It rang 4 times before she answered. "What do you want, Eli?" "I want you to come to Millfield Savings and Loan right now." "Why would I do that?" "Because your sister is robbing you blind, and you need to see it with your own eyes." There was a long pause. "What are you talking about?" "Tanya's in the bank right now, cleaning out your safety deposit box. She forged your signature, used your key, and she's stealing everything you've got stored there. That's impossible. Tanya doesn't even know about the safety deposit box. She's known about it for days. She's been planning this with her boyfriend Shane. They're going to take everything you own and disappear to Florida. You're lying. Jenna, I'm standing in the bank manager's office right now, watching security footage of your sister robbing you. If you don't believe me, come see for yourself. Another pause, longer this time. If this is some kind of trick, it's not a trick, it's the truth, and you need to hear it before she destroys your life the same way she destroyed our marriage. What do you mean? I mean, she's the one who convinced you I was cheating. She's the one who told you about the secret bank account, except she lied about what it was for. She's the one who's been stealing from us for months, and she kicked me out so she could have free access to everything we own. I could hear Jenna breathing on the other end of the line, but she didn't say anything. 20 minutes, I said. Give me 20 minutes to prove that everything you think you know is wrong. The line went quiet, and for a moment I thought she'd hung up. Then, I'll be there in 15 minutes. I walked back into the manager's office where Tanya was just finishing up at the safety deposit box. She'd taken everything that looked valuable and was preparing to leave. My wife's on her way, I told Mr. Hendricks. Can you stall the sister until she gets here? How? Tell her there's a problem with the signature card. Tell her you need additional identification. Tell her whatever you want, but don't let her leave. Mr. Hendricks nodded and picked up his phone, calling down to the safe deposit box area. I watched on the monitor as a bank employee approached Tanya and started talking to her. She looked annoyed but not panicked. Yet. Jenna arrived 12 minutes later, walking into the bank like she was heading to her own execution. She looked tired and confused, and maybe a little scared. Where is she? Jenna asked. Downstairs, I said. But before you see her, I want you to see this. I showed her the video from the night before, the one where Tanya and Shane went through our house like professional thieves. I showed her the conversation about insurance fraud and the plan to burn down our home. I showed her Tanya going through her purse, stealing her earrings, talking about how easy it was to manipulate her. Jenna watched it all without saying a word, but I could see the color draining from her face. She's my sister, she whispered. I know. She said you were cheating on me. I wasn't. The bank account she told you about was a vacation fund. I was saving money to take you to Ireland for our anniversary. Jenna looked up at me, and for the first time in weeks, she really saw me. Not the villain Tanya had painted me as, but the man she'd married 6 years ago. I'm so sorry, she said. We'll talk about that later. Right now, your sister is downstairs stealing the last of your valuables, and we need to decide what to do about it. Mr. Hendricks cleared his throat. Actually, Mrs. Crane, we need to decide right now. She's getting agitated, and I don't think we can stall her much longer. Jenna straightened her shoulders, and I saw some of the strength that had made me fall in love with her in the first place. I want to confront her, she said, face to face. Are you sure? She's been lying to me for months. She destroyed my marriage, stole my money, and was planning to burn down my house. Yeah, I'm sure. We walked downstairs together, Jenna and I, united for the first time in months by a common enemy. Tanya was standing by the safe deposit boxes, arguing with a bank employee about additional paperwork. There's no problem with the paperwork, she was saying. I've been here before. I know what I'm doing. Actually, Jenna said, stepping into view, there is a problem. Tanya spun around, and the color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Jenna, what are you doing here? I'm here to watch my sister steal from me, again. I don't know what you're talking about. Jenna held up her phone, showing the video I'd shared with her. Really? Because I've got you on camera going through my house last night, taking my jewelry, planning to commit insurance fraud. Tanya's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. That's not... Eli must have faked those videos somehow. Did he fake the contents of your purse too? Jenna asked. Because I'm betting if we look inside it right now, we'll find my grandmother's ring and about $3,000 in cash from my safety deposit box. You can't search my purse without a warrant. Actually, Mr. Hendricks said, stepping forward with 2 police officers I hadn't noticed arriving, we can search it as evidence of bank fraud and forgery. The next few minutes were a blur of accusations, denials, and handcuffs. Tanya tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. She tried to blame me, but the videos didn't lie. She tried to claim she was just borrowing the money, but the recorded conversations about fleeing to Florida made that impossible to believe. In the end, she broke down completely, sobbing and screaming that it wasn't fair, that Jenna had everything and she had nothing, that she deserved her share of the family wealth. What family wealth? Jenna asked, genuinely confused. We're barely middle class. But Tanya was beyond rational conversation. She was dragged out of the bank in handcuffs, still screaming about how everyone had betrayed her. Jenna and I stood in the parking lot afterward, watching the police car disappear down Main Street. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. You owe me more than that. She looked at me, surprised by the hardness in my voice. You threw me out of my own house based on lies, I continued. You changed the locks, hired a lawyer, and told everyone in town that I was a cheating, lying piece of garbage. You believed your sister over your husband without even asking for my side of the story. I know, but I'm not finished. You let her steal $4,000 from our vacation fund. You let her turn our neighbors against me. You celebrated your freedom on Facebook while I was living in a motel room that smells like failure and regret. Jenna's eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't done yet. So yes, you owe me an apology, but more than that, you owe me an explanation. Because I need to understand how the woman I married could believe I was capable of the things your sister accused me of. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. She showed me bank statements, she finally said. Withdrawals from accounts I didn't know about. She said you were spending money on another woman. Did you ever think to ask me about those statements? I was scared. Of what? Of finding out it was true. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I was scared that you'd gotten tired of me, tired of our life, tired of struggling to pay bills and never having enough money for anything fun. And when Tanya showed me the evidence, you wanted to believe it. No, I never wanted to believe it, but it explained so much. Why you were working late all the time, why you were secretive about money, why you seemed so distant lately. I thought about that. She wasn't entirely wrong. I had been working late, but it was to earn money for the vacation. I had been secretive about money, but it was to keep the surprise. I had been distant, but it was because I was exhausted from working 2 jobs. I was planning to surprise you, I said. Ireland, for our anniversary. 2 weeks in Dublin and the countryside. I'd already booked the hotels, bought the plane tickets, arranged time off work. She started crying harder. I'm so sorry, Eli. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, Jenna. Sorry doesn't give me back my reputation or my workshop or the trust we used to have. Then what do you want from me? I looked at her, this woman I'd loved for 6 years, and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Anger, yes. Hurt, definitely. But also something else. Something I hadn't expected. Relief. Because for the first time in months, I knew exactly where I stood. I want you to think about whether this marriage is worth saving, I said. Really think about it. Not what Tanya told you to think, not what your friends think, not what looks good on Facebook, what you actually want. I want to fix this. It's going to take time and work, and you're going to have to earn back my trust, the same way I'm going to have to earn back yours. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Where do we start? She asked. I looked back at the bank, where her sister had just been arrested for robbing us both, then at the woman who'd thrown me out of my own house based on lies. We start, I said, by going home. 3 weeks later, I was back in my workshop, trying to finish the hope chest I'd started building for Jenna's Christmas present. The tools were back where they belonged, rescued from the evidence locker after Tanya's arraignment. The house felt like home again, mostly. But things weren't the same. They probably never would be. Jenna and I were sleeping in the same bed, eating dinner together, going through the motions of being married. But there was a careful distance between us now, like we were both afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. She'd posted a Facebook apology, explaining that she'd been misled by false information and that our separation had been based on misunderstandings. It was diplomatic and vague, the kind of statement that admitted fault without really admitting anything. The comments were mixed. Some people were supportive, glad to see us working things out. Others seemed almost disappointed that the drama was over. A few suggested that where there's smoke, there's usually fire, implying that I must have done something to deserve suspicion in the first place. Craig Jeffries had been notably silent since Tanya's arrest. I was sanding the lid of the hope chest when Jimmy knocked on the basement door. "How's it going down there?" he asked, looking around the workshop. "Slowly. I'm out of practice." I meant with Jenna. I set down the sandpaper and leaned against the workbench. "I don't know. We're trying, but it's complicated." "Complicated how?" "She says she trusts me now, but she still flinches when I come home late. She says she's sorry, but she still checks my phone when she thinks I'm not looking. She says she wants to fix things, but she won't talk about what really happened." Jimmy nodded. "What really happened?" "She wanted to believe I was cheating. Maybe not consciously, but part of her was looking for a reason to end our marriage, and Tanya gave her one." "Why would she want that?" I'd been thinking about that question for weeks. Because it's easier than admitting we've been drifting apart for years. Easier than talking about the fact that we want different things, that we've become different people since we got married. "So what are you going to do?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's parking lot in an hour. Come alone. T. Tanya." She'd made bail 2 days ago, pending trial. I showed the message to Jimmy, who frowned. "That's probably not a good idea, buddy." "Why not? What's she gonna do, steal my truck?" "She might try to convince you to drop the charges, or threaten you, or who knows what else." "I'm not dropping the charges, and I'm not afraid of Tanya." "Maybe you should be. She's looking at serious prison time, and people do desperate things when they're cornered." I thought about it. He was probably right, but I was also curious about what Tanya wanted to say. And maybe it was time for us to have an honest conversation, without lawyers or police officers or family members getting in the way. "I'll be careful," I said. An hour later, I was sitting in my truck in Murphy's hardware parking lot, watching Tanya pace back and forth next to her red Honda. She looked terrible, thin, pale, with dark circles under her eyes that suggested she hadn't been sleeping much. She climbed into my passenger seat without being invited. "You look good," she said. "Marriage agrees with you." "Cut the crap, Tanya. What do you want?" "I want you to understand something. What I did for Jenna." I stared at her. "You stole from her. You lied to her. You tried to destroy her marriage and burn down her house. How was any of that for Jenna?" "Because she was miserable. She was stuck in an end marriage with a man who worked all the time and never paid attention to her. She needed a way out, and she was too scared to take it on her own. So you decided to help her by framing me for adultery. I decided to help her by showing her who you really were. And who am I exactly?" Tanya turned to face me, and I saw something in her eyes that I'd never noticed before. Not just anger or resentment, but genuine hatred. "You're selfish," she said. "You think you're this great guy, this devoted husband, but you're not. You're selfish and controlling, and you never deserved her." "Controlling how?" "You made all the decisions. Where to live, how to spend money, what kind of car to buy. You never asked what she wanted. We made those decisions together. No, you made suggestions, and she agreed with them because she was afraid of fighting with you. I thought about that. It was possible, I supposed. Jenna had always been conflict-averse, more likely to go along with something than argue about it. Even if that's true, I said, it doesn't justify what you did. Doesn't it? She's happier now. She's stronger, more independent. She's making her own choices for the first time in years. She's making choices based on lies you told her. The lies don't matter. What matters is that she's free. Free to be robbed by her own sister? Tanya's expression hardened. That money was as much mine as hers. My parents left both of us that house, but she got to live in it while I got nothing. What house? The house on Maple Street, the one our parents left us when they died. Jenna bought out my half for $30,000, but it was worth twice that. I'd heard about the house, but I'd never known the details. Jenna had told me she'd inherited some money from her parents, which she'd used as a down payment on our house. So you stole from her to get revenge for a real estate deal that happened 10 years ago? I took what was rightfully mine. You took a lot more than $30,000, Tanya. Because she owed me interest, and pain and suffering, and compensation for all the years I had to watch her live the life I should have had. There it was. The real truth, finally. This wasn't about protecting Jenna or helping her escape an unhappy marriage. This was about jealousy, pure and simple. You know what's funny? I said. If you'd just asked for help, we probably would have given it to you. Jenna loves you. She would have done anything for you. I don't want charity. But you're fine with theft. Tanya was quiet for a moment, staring out the windshield at the hardware store. I want you to drop the charges, she said finally. Not going to happen. I'll pay back everything I took. With what money? I'll get a job. I'll make payments, whatever it takes. You had a job, Tanya. It was called being a sister, and you failed at it. She turned back to me, and now the hatred in her eyes was unmistakable. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? I think I'm different from you. I don't steal from people I claim to love. You stole from her too. How? You stole her choices, her independence, her chance to find out who she really was without someone telling her what to think and feel and want. That's not stealing. That's called being married. Is it? Because from where I sit, it looks like you were just as controlling as I was manipulative. The only difference is that your methods were legal. I considered that. Was she right? Had I been controlling without realizing it? Had I made decisions for both of us because it was easier than negotiating every little thing? Maybe. But there was still a fundamental difference between influence and theft, between persuasion and lies. Even if you're right, I said, what you did was still wrong. And what you did wasn't. What I did was love my wife and try to build a life with her. What you did was destroy that life for your own selfish reasons. I set her free. You manipulated her. Same thing sometimes. We sat in silence for a few minutes, two people who'd never liked each other very much, finally being honest about it. The charges stand, I said finally. You're going to prison, Tanya, and you're going to stay away from my wife. She's not your wife anymore. What do you mean? Tanya smiled for the first time since she'd gotten in the truck. I mean, she filed for divorce yesterday. Didn't she tell you? My stomach dropped. You're lying. Am I? Check your email. I bet there's a message from her lawyer right now. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. Sure enough, there was an email from a law office I didn't recognize, with the subject line, Crane versus Crane, Dissolution of Marriage. I opened it and scanned the legal language. Irreconcilable differences, division of assets, custody arrangements for any future children, not applicable. It was all very civilized and businesslike, the kind of divorce that happens when two people realize they don't actually like each other very much. She wanted to tell you herself, Tanya said, but she was afraid you'd try to talk her out of it. Did you convince her to do this? I didn't have to. She came to that conclusion all by herself, once she had time to think about everything that happened. I stared at the email, trying to process what I was reading. 3 weeks of trying to rebuild our marriage, 3 weeks of careful conversations and tentative reconciliation, and she'd been planning to leave me the whole time. Why? I asked. Because she realized that even though I lied about the details, I was right about the big picture. You two aren't happy together. You haven't been happy for years, and staying married just because it's easier than getting divorced isn't a good enough reason anymore. I wanted to argue with her, but I couldn't, because deep down, in the part of my heart I'd been trying to ignore, I knew she was right. Jenna and I had been going through the motions for months before Tanya's lies tore us apart. We'd been like roommates who split the bills and occasionally had dinner together, not like husband and wife who were building a future together. She still loves you, Tanya said softly, but she's not in love with you, and you're not in love with her either, are you? I thought about it, really thought about it, maybe for the first time in years. Did I love Jenna? Yes, absolutely. She was a good person, a kind person, someone I cared about deeply. But was I in love with her? Was I excited to see her at the end of the day? Did I miss her when she was gone? Did I look forward to growing old with her? The answer, if I was being completely honest, was no. The charges still stand, I said again, but without much conviction. I know, and I deserve whatever happens to me, but at least now you both have a chance to find something real, instead of just settling for something convenient. Tanya got out of the truck and walked back to her car. I sat there for a long time, staring at the divorce papers on my phone, trying to figure out how I felt about the end of my marriage. Sad, yes. Disappointed, definitely. But also, if I was being honest, a little relieved, because Tanya was right about one thing. Jenna and I hadn't been happy for a long time. We'd just been too scared or too stubborn to admit it. Maybe it was time to stop pretending otherwise. I drove home to find Jenna sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a box of tissues. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes red from crying. "You got the email," she said. "Yeah. I'm sorry I didn't tell you in person. I didn't know how." I sat down across from her, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, where we'd paid bills and planned vacations and argued about whose turn it was to take out the trash. "When did you decide?" I asked. "A few days ago, maybe longer. I don't know exactly when the decision happened, but I woke up yesterday morning and I knew." "Knew what?" "That we were trying to fix something that was already broken, that we were staying together because we thought we should, not because we wanted to." I nodded. "I think you're right." She looked surprised. "You do?" "Yeah. I love you, Jenna. I always will. But we're not the same people we were when we got married, and we're not growing in the same direction anymore." "I know, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I'm sorry I let Tanya manipulate me instead of just talking to you about how I was feeling. I'm sorry, too, for a lot of things." We sat there in comfortable silence for a while, two people who'd shared 6 years of their lives together, saying goodbye without really saying goodbye. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we figure out how to be friends instead of spouses. We divide up our stuff, sell the house, and start over." "Are you scared?" "Terrified, but also excited, which is how I know this is the right decision." I reached across the table and took her hand. "For what it's worth, I think you're going to be fine. Better than fine. You too." We talked for another hour, working out the practical details of our separation. Who would take what furniture, how to handle the mortgage when I would move out. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. As I was packing my tools back into boxes, preparing to move them to a new workshop in a new house, I thought about everything that had happened. Tanya's lies had destroyed my marriage, but they'd also forced both Jenna and me to confront truths we'd been avoiding for years. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. I was loading the last box into my truck when Mrs. Dwyer appeared at my elbow, seemingly out of nowhere. "Moving out again?" she asked. "For the last time, I hope." "You know I always liked you, Eli. You were a good neighbor. Quiet, helpful, minded your own business." "Thanks, Mrs. Dwyer. That sister of hers, though. I never trusted her. Too much ambition, not enough conscience." I thought about Tanya, probably sitting in a jail cell right now, waiting for her trial. She got what she wanted in the end. Did she? Because from where I sit, she lost her sister, her freedom, and her future. Doesn't seem like much of a victory to me. Mrs. Dwyer was right. Tanya had succeeded in breaking up my marriage, but she'd also destroyed her relationship with Jenna and landed herself in legal trouble that would follow her for years. "What about you?" Mrs. Dwyer asked. "What did you get out of all this?" I looked back at the house on Orchard Lane, where Jenna was probably packing her own boxes, preparing for her own new beginning. "The truth," I said. Finally. As I drove away from Orchard Lane for the last time, I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Tanya, not at Jenna, not even at myself. I was just tired and ready to start over. Sometimes that's the best revenge of all. Moving on and being happy, while the people who tried to destroy you have to live with the consequences of their choices. The last house on Orchard Lane disappeared in my rearview mirror, and I didn't look back.